Roger Stone here for Colonial Metals Group. Colonial Metals Group helps Americans protect their future with the most trusted store of wealth in human history. That's actual physical gold and silver. If you're retiring or you're retired, go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/stone right now for your free Roger Stone Colonial Metals Group Retirement Protection Kit. Or call 800-747-6589. That's 800-747-6589. Call now to receive your free home safe and up to $7,500 in free silver.
Folks, we're going to spend a little time with my dear friend, Ambassador Robert O'Brien, who was a former National Security Advisor in the Trump administration, presently Chairman, American Global Strategies. Robert, welcome. Thank you for this. In cold blood, that was the thought I had this morning as I was thinking about our guests. I always try to have a topic or two. In cold blood, Hamas murdered six hostages just before the Israeli forces were coming in. One of them was an American. What have we done about this? What is the current administration, Biden and Harris, done about it, said about it, anything about it? 6 people killed in cold blood. What have we done, Robert O'Brien?
Well, Larry, thanks for having me on the show this morning. You know, I tweeted out yesterday that the whole event really hit me hard. I got to know the Goldberg Poland parents a little bit over the past year as they've reached out to try and figure out how to get their son home. And we had such high hopes to get Hirsch Goldberg Poland home. He's a beautiful young man taking a music festival. He had his arm blown off as he was trying to defend his friends as Hamas was throwing grenades at them. And he survived for a year, Larry. In those horrific tunnels, he survived the whole captivity, and through his strength and dignity, and then only to be shot in the back of the head by a Hamas terrorist right before being rescued. It's just heartbreaking. And to answer your question, we've done nothing about Hirsch or about the others who were killed. You know, in the old days of the Reagan years, when you and I worked for Reagan in the 80s, Ronald Reagan used to say to terrorists, you can run, but you can't hide. We'll find you. There's none of that. President Trump did the same thing. We brought justice al-Baghdadi. We brought justice to all the terrorists who killed Americans. But there's none of that today, unfortunately. We've lost respect for our adversaries and of our allies as we do nothing in response to the brutal killings of these Americans.
Nothing. So there's an there's an editorial in the Wall Street Journal this morning. The sanctions Biden will enforce. This is something. Iran sells oil, no problem. But West Bank Israelis are now the target of sanctions. You've got a group, Hashem or Yash, called the Guardian of Judea and Samaria. It's a volunteer group protecting West Bank farming outposts. And the Biden administration is criticizing them. Tell them to get out. Mind you, Iran is producing 3.5 million barrels of oil per day, most of it going to China. Their foreign exchange reserves are approaching $100 billion. The sanctions that Trump put on were essentially lifted. So they're going after Israelis protecting West Bank farming communities. They're not going after Iranians, or, for that matter, Hamas. They're still stalling and trying to stall out in southern Gaza, the ultimate Israeli offensive. I mean, it's incredible to me, Robert. It's just, look, you're the diplomatic expert. You've been doing this for a long time. I followed you in the White House, but I don't understand this. This is beyond my comprehension.
No, Larry, you're right. We're in an Alice in Wonderland situation. We're down the rabbit hole. And the Israelis have somehow become the impediments to peace. The people that were attacked in the worst genocide since the Holocaust occurred against Jews on October 7th of last year. And, 1,500 Jews were slaughtered. Innocent civilians were slaughtered. They weren't collateral damage in an armed attack against a military base or that sort of thing. The civilians themselves were sought out and killed, just like the German troops did in World War II at the outset when they went to Poland. They cleared a city and they round up all the Jews and kill them. Hamas did the exact same thing. It was Nazi-like in their approach to liquidating Jews. But we haven't seen this in in our lifetime. And yet all the pressure is being brought on Netanyahu. He's the bad guy. All the pressure is being brought on Jewish settlers who are protecting themselves. And Hamas, which is murdering Americans. Remember, 30 Americans were killed on October 7th. A dozen were taken hostage.
Yep.
Hamas is still holding Americans hostage, and we're negotiating with them like there's some sort of NGO or some sort of legitimate government, and making nice to their state sponsor, Iran, allowing Iran to become rich and use all that money, all that oil money to pay the Hezbollah and Hamas and Kataib Hezbollah and the Houthis to rain terror all over the region. And it's just it's mind-boggling, Larry. You can't explain it.
Robert O'Brien, some of the other discussions, editorials in the Journal's been awfully good on this, I think. But
they have, and they've been great.
You've got all these proposed peace deals, ceasefire deals, or ceasefire for hostages, which frankly impede Israel from the final, just blowing up Hamas in the south, Rafah and so forth, which is what I would prefer to see. But my point is this. In every case, it is Hamas who says no to the deal. It's not Israel. It's Hamas who says no to the deal. So I'm looking at Netanyahu. He's being interviewed. He was interviewed at Fox and Friends earlier this week on Fox. Not his fault. And I don't think these deals are that great for Israel in the first place, but it's Hamas that keeps saying no. And I don't see any Biden should be saying this publicly, blaming Hamas. That's what I'm waiting for, but I'm going to wait a long time, I guess.
You're going to wait a long time because these guys have decided that somehow Iran is a solution to the Middle East.
Yeah.
For us to get out of the Middle East, if we can turn it over to Iran, everything will be fine. And it's these Iran. If you're progressive, if you're a left winger, Iran are the people who are oppressing women. There's no choice rights in Iran. You can't be a female and walk outside without a hijab on. You can't be gay or lesbian without getting hung from a crane and killed. And yet these are the very people that they're turning the Middle East over to, or trying to turn the Middle East over to. Compare that to President Trump, Larry. We saw President Trump. We had the caliphate, the ISIS caliphate, which is the size of Great Britain, spread across Iraq and Syria when we were in office. President Trump eliminated the entire physical caliphate. They said it couldn't be done. The Obama folks couldn't do it. We went in there with our allies, the Kurds, and we wiped out the entire physical caliphate and turned it back to the Kurds and the Yazidis and the people who lived there. And then remember that daring raid 1,500 miles beyond enemy lines where we went in and got al-Baghdadi and took him out and brought justice for the guy who killed Caleb Mueller and Stephen Soloff and James Foley and Peter Kasich, the American 4 who were killed by ISIS, beheaded, and in Caleb's case, terribly abused and then killed. And that's how you deal with these guys. And the other thing is, I called very early on October 8th, the day after the massacre in Israel. I said, send SEAL Team 6 and Dev Brew and send Delta Force in, and let's go rescue our American hostages. Let's not hope for the goodwill of Hamas. And we saw how that ended up with bullets in the heads of an American, Hirsch Goldberg, Poland, and the others. And we should have had our special forces who are exquisitely trained, who want to do the mission. These guys, it's very dangerous, but they want to go rescue Americans. That's their reason for being there. Raison d'etre is to go save Americans. Where were they? And finally, Larry, why weren't we taking out the leaders of Hamas with the Israelis who killed Americans? Why weren't we killing and capturing them? Why weren't we taking the Hamas leaders that were spread around the Middle East and bringing them to Guantanamo Bay and using them as chits to trade back for the American hostages to get them out? And this whole thing that we've treated Hamas like they're our ally and Israel like they're our enemy is just disgraceful.
This is the last thought. So we've put, United States government, Defense Department has put a lot of military hardware in that neighborhood, battleships and whatnot. A lot of hardware. But they're not doing anything with it, Robert O'Brien. And the commander-in-chief is not making the right threatening noises that he should be making. I mean, I don't think anybody's afraid of us because we lined up all the ships and the hardware, but they know in some sense that Biden will never, ever pull the trigger. And my view is enemies should be afraid that a U.S. president will pull the trigger. And that's the problem here. They're not afraid because he never pulls the trigger, and he never says he's going to pull the trigger. Last word, Robert O'Brien.
We've lost all deterrence. And keep in mind, Larry, unlike the Trump administration, where we had numerous military rescues of hostages successful by our allies, with our support, or by our forces, our special forces, there hasn't been one military rescue of a hostage in the last 3.5 years of the Biden administration.
Wow.
They paid a lot of ransom, but no military rescues. And our adversaries, Hamas, Hezbollah, watch that. They know there's no risk to them. So there's a $15 billion American carrier off the coast of Israel, but they know that there's no threat to them, so that they don't respect us and they don't act accordingly. We've lost deterrence.
Terrific. Just unbelievable. Anyway, folks, you're listening to Ambassador Robert O'Brien, former National Security Advisor, Chairman of American Global Strategies. Spot on, Robert. Thanks for helping us out. We appreciate it very much.